life.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this now, Lewis, and it might be a little redundant, but you take this question and you apply it how you will.
Sure.
So are you saying that the plant-based diet is essential to diabetes reversal and retention?
Absolutely, it is. So and it's not something new. This is not something that we just figuring out. Like I said, it's very well researched. Okay, that the more you limit animal products in your diet, the closer you can reverse not just diabetes but many diseases.
Yes.
But of course, since we're talking about diabetes, I'll quote some studies. So there's a study called the EPIC study, which is probably one of the largest nutritional studies. EPIC stands for the European Perspective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition. So they were looking at different ways nutrition affects diseases, and diabetes was one of them. And one thing that was clear through this study, which studied 500,000 people over 12 years. So it's a huge study. There's no question on its results. And this study showed that the more meat in the diet, especially processed meat like sausage or hamburgers, bacon, the more meat in your diet, the higher your risk of developing diabetes. The study also showed something amazing, that if you and it shows you the power of just making little changes. If you replace just 5% of the saturated fat in your diet that comes from animal products, just 5%, with fruits. If you take 5% of the saturated meat or dairy or egg or cheese, whatever, in your diet, and you replace it with fruits, you decrease your risk of diabetes by 30%.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful?
And this was a huge study, right?
And I'm going to be honest. For my personal stuff, thank God I have not been exposed to diabetes,
Yes.
and I'm trying to do everything as I get older to change that. But I still have this habit of having the meat product occasionally, and eat a burger. I love me a burger. I'm a burger. But I'm learning to change that, and learning to try to have a substitute. If I have to have a burger, let's do the plant-based burger. Now some of our local stores are starting to provide the vegan style burger. Still, they're not 100% the greatest, but you know what I mean?
It's a step down approach.
A baby step, right? Taking the small steps necessary to get there. And I encourage people that, because, it's a lifestyle change. It's not a one-time thing. It's going to be a consistent thing over a course of a lifetime. So it takes the small steps to get where you're going. And even if you are not pre-diabetic, I think we start to, my mindset, and I encourage my clients the same way, start to treat yourself as if you were sick. You're not sick, but you're going to start eating and living a more healthier life that you don't have to get there, right?
Yes.
So it's important to implement these little things in your diet. The eating of fresh fruits and vegetables and adding the fruits to the diet is really important from now, that you can avoid it for those who are not sick.
Absolutely.
So my next question to you now, let's talk a little bit about the intermittent fasting. I came to your website and I came across intermittent fasting. I was so excited because I've heard about it and I tried it, and I've been doing it on and off myself. We want to look at intermittent fasting, how it's applied to pre-diabetics and diabetes versus the keto diet.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, that's a good comparison. Now, I do want to touch on your last note still, because I'm so glad you mentioned prevention. Because so often we talk about treatment and cure. The best an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of a cure, right? And the thing about diabetes is that it takes a long time to develop, and you could have diabetes for a lot longer than you had diabetes. You're just only finding out now. Studies show that it could take up to 8 to 10 years or even longer for your blood work to show that you're diabetic. What does that mean? You could be eating,
that I didn't know. I've done research. I have some background in the research, but never come across that.
It's amazing.
That's interesting.
It's amazing. So in other words, you could be eating your way towards diabetes and have diabetes for almost 8 to 10 years before you go to the doctor and your blood sugar is high. It's just that your pancreas has been keeping up, but your pancreas has been failing for either you've been failing your pancreas, I should say, and eating the way you want to eat, and don't know it until it's too late. And
And
by the
that
time you
has
find out,
nothing to do with predisposal from
no,
family or
no, no,
anything
yep,
like it's just
just diet, yeah,
eating habits. Oh
just diet
wow.
alone.
You see
Okay,
that? That's
just
major.
so the best way to prevent it is now. The best time to prevent it is now, because
It's
by the
now.
time your blood work shows that you're diabetic, you're probably so far advanced that now you need medicine, now you need insulin, and now you're going up. Now it's an upward climb to reverse the damage.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
So.
So see it so in and that's why
Mhm.
so much large numbers of people be coming out with and the population of ethnic people is so high
Yes.
because and then especially in our children are coming pre-diabetic
Yeah.
or diabetic very early.
Early. Yep.
So it's the eating habits,
Mm-hmm.
and it can also be the predisposal from family,
Family. Exactly.
genetic,
Yeah.
right?
It's
And
huge.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
there's all
That's
the
interesting.
there's also other things I wanted to touch on too, because um, there's another study called Adventist Health Studies. There's actually ongoing studies that the Seventh-day Adventist Church puts on, and basically examining the diets of those who are eating no meat and no dairy, no eggs, no cheese, and things like that, because the Seventh-day Adventist Church is very unique, as you may know, right? In the way we eat. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, you have people who are meat eaters. You got people who are vegetarians. You got people who are, a new term I hear is
Yeah.
flexitarian, meaning you're vegetarian but you eat meat once in a while, right? You got
Mm-hmm.
lacto-ovo vegetarians, meaning you eat eggs and cheese, but you don't eat meat. Then you have full-out vegans who eat, who don't eat any animal products. And what the
Mm-hmm.
studies show, they've actually studied 8,000 people in various diets, and it was very consistent. The less animal products you eat, the less chronic disease you experience in your lifetime. The less animal products you eat, the longer you live.
And this is so
And
true.
it's and
And
it
this is
makes it
for
makes complete
real.
sense. Yeah, it make because if you look at blue zones, I don't know if many people know what blue zones are. They're the areas in our world where people are living the longest, right?
Mm-hmm.
In blue zone studies, those who are living the longest in population studies are those who have minimal animal products in their diet. They eat meat. They may eat meat, or dairy or cheese, but
Very few
it's not the
harvesting.
main course, right? The main course is fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lentils, beans, wholesome foods are making up the majority of their plate.
Mm.
They're the only population living longest. And I think this jumps into your next question about keto versus intermittent fasting, because keto diets work, right? For short-term effects and for diabetes numbers, so to speak, right? It brings your numbers down. It really does. But I challenge you to find a population in this world that is on a high fat, high protein diet and living long. There is none. There's no population in this world that you can study and eating a high fat and high protein diet, living long and without chronic disease.
Mercy.
There
And
are
that
studies,
even
but they're
in
short term.
studies, not to cut you, but
Sure.
even in studies, the biggest piece is animal. When they do the animal studies,
Yeah.
the animals can survive, on a high fat diet or
Yes.
high
Yeah.
sugar diet.
Yeah.
Any of those things that they have attempted on the animals, they have not survived it.
Yeah.
So you are totally right
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So I say that because we should pit not just a keto diet with intermittent fasting. We should also pit keto diet with plant-based diet, because keto diet works because my wife, when she was on keto diet, her blood sugars normalized, right? But her cholesterol rose. Um, and with keto diet, the danger of keto diets and is that it increases your risk, from studies we know, increases your risk of chronic diseases like kidney disease. We know that animal protein is toxic to the kidneys. So you're going to tell me you're going to overload on animal protein, your kidneys are going to be fine in the long term? Right now it is, but why the risk? When there's something better.
Right.
Animal protein and animal fats we know increase our risk of cardiovascular disease. You might be okay now, but why increase your risk for later? For chronic disease and death. Sure, your diabetes numbers is great, but I want to be healthy. I don't want to make my doctor happy, because that's all you're doing is making your doctor happy so he can get his bonus. Okay.
And the pharmaceuticals.
Yeah,
And the
and
pharmaceuticals.
let's not go into that, right? Yeah, let's not go into that too much. But let's not just
That's a
work.
whole nother story.
Let's
We
not
could
just
do a
look
whole
at the
nother
numbers. Let's look at our
whole nother
health.
program on that
Exactly.
one.
That's a whole nother podcast interview. But let's
Yeah.
look at our health, right? Overall, that should be our goal, not the numbers. Yeah, keto works great to bring your numbers down, but what is it doing for your overall health? Okay. So that's my, my keto talk. All right. But intermittent fasting is wonderful. Now, intermittent fasting works effectively because what it does is over time, it makes your body more sensitive to your insulin, right? Because we know, as we talked a little bit before, diabetes is a disease of insulin resistance. So your body is not responding to the insulin your pancreas is making. So your pancreas makes more and more of it, and more and more of it, and making more of it makes you more resistant to it. So it's like a cycle,
Mhm.
right? So what happens when you're fasting is your insulin levels drop. Okay. And
Mhm.
that's why you have to be very careful. If you're a diabetic on insulin, like you're injecting insulin, I would say make sure you let your doctor know that you're practicing fasting. Because when you
Mhm.
fast, during your fasting hours, your insulin levels will drop.
They're very
Right.
low. Yeah.
Why is that a
Mhm.
good thing? Is that over time, and it doesn't happen right away, over time your baseline insulin starts to go lower, right? So now your insulin starts to your insulin resistance starts to reverse, because what causes insulin resistance is more and more insulin, right? I guess
Mm.
one way to describe this, and it can be pretty complex. If I were to scream, if you were to have a baby, or let's say screaming loud, making all this noise, um, at first you hear its cries, right, and it's annoying, and you want to stop the crying baby. But
Mm.
after some time, your ears get accustomed to it, and it doesn't annoy you as much, right?
Mhm.
The cries of the baby, or the cries of that child, right? You start to get insensitive to the noise, right? Apply this to anything. You're living in a city, right? And you used to live in the country. When you live in the city, at first the ambulance and the car sounds and the honking, it drives you crazy. But eventually your ears start to tune it out and tune it down, so it's no
Mhm.
longer sensitive to it, right?
Mhm.
It no longer
Mhm.
overwhelms you. The same thing happens metabolically in our bodies with insulin. As the pancreas starts to scream for cries of help, sending insulin out to the blood, your body starts to get less and less sensitive to its cries because it's overwhelming. So the body tones down its response to insulin. So your body's no longer responding to the insulin because there's so much of it.
Right.
So when you fast, how fasting works, fasting tones down the noise. It tones down the
Mhm.
insulin's cries, so that the insulin now your body starts to respond to it, and listen to it, and starts to work better. So intermittent fasting is just one of the many tools you need to practice, or should be practicing, in diabetes reversal, because it works on the core problem of diabetes,
Mhm.
responding to insulin's cries. You start to listen to insulin. There's also other benefits, of course. In intermittent fasting, you find that you start to lose weight, particularly fat. You start to burn fat, and fat actually is what causes, like we just talked about, fat is the core cause of diabetes. So if you start to lose fat, you're actually starting to make your insulin work even better as well, right? So that's the other
Mhm.
benefit. So I would say those are the two main things in why intermittent fasting works. It makes your body respond to insulin better because it's lowering your baseline insulin levels, and it helps your insulin to work better because it decreases the amount of fat in the body.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Really good. So between the two of them, and I mean, this is just a question that I'm throwing out there.
Yeah.
So between the two, intermittent fast is the keto diet. Which one would you say weighs better if a person is looking into these options?
Yeah. So I would absolutely say, if I were to choose one or the other, I would choose intermittent fasting. Um, However, it does take time, whereas keto diet works pretty quickly, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it really depends on the person, okay? So if you're a person whose sugars are dangerously high, I'm talking 300, 400 numbers from hundreds,
Mm-hmm.
you probably would benefit more in the short term to start with keto, to at least get your numbers down
Put the
to a
numbers
safe
down.
level, right? But it should
Mm-hmm.
not be long term, because keto is not reversing it. It's just managing the dangerous symptom, right? What you're doing, you're giving yourself an antidote for the symptom. I think the best way to get best analogy for that is if you have a peanut allergy, right? A peanut allergy means you're overly sensitive to peanuts, right? You eat a peanut and your body goes crazy, right? I think it's a good analogy with diabetes because diabetics are essentially allergic, not really, but allergic to glucose, to sugar, right? They take a little sugar and they're overly sensitive to it, and the sugar spikes in their blood to dangerous levels. Okay, so back to the peanut. If you have a peanut allergy, if I tell you, okay, I'm going to cure you of your peanut allergy, stop eating peanuts. Are you cured from peanut allergy?
No. You're always going to have an allergy.
You still have the allergy. You're just not eating peanuts anymore. That's what keto diet does. A keto diet takes the carbs out of your diet. So that's not curing your diabetes. It's just taking care of the symptom of diabetes. Right? The moment you eat an apple now, what happens? Your sugar spikes and jumps to the roof, right? Right? The apple that is full of nutrients, the apple that's full of phytochemicals, the apple that's full of fiber, the apple that's antioxidant, cancer fighting, the fruits that help you reverse disease and prevent cancer. You can't eat that on a keto diet. So you're setting yourself up for chronic disease.
Okay. So it would just be like an entry for a person who's just trying to get their numbers down. Yeah. Maybe like a pre-diabetic person.
So in that, like I said, it varies with the person. So if I'm working with a person who's already on it, and then I'd probably start weaning them off of it. But the best thing to do is really try to practice not just fasting, but also a whole food plant-based diet instead of a keto diet. Because a whole food, plant-based, low-fat diet along with fasting, addresses the core problem. Now you're not just dealing with a symptom of the disease, like taking peanuts away from a peanut allergy, but you're actually reversing the cause of diabetes.
Right. So give us a little bit of what that looks like, the low-fat, plant-based diet. Okay. Just a smidgen. Just give us an idea of what that would look like.
Okay. So the first thing that you want to do to do it effectively is probably start to learn to cook without oil. Right? I know this is a foreign concept for a lot of us. I know that's one of the hardest part. I know. Like, what? No oil? What do I use?
In today's world.
Well, guess you'd be surprised, man. We've been eating without oil for a long time, and I don't even know the difference really. You don't need, and a lot of people say, I don't use that much oil. I only use a little bit of oil. Then why do you need it at all?
So no sesame seed oil, no olive oils, no sunflower, this and all of those, and then all these fancy stuff that's in the market. The Earth's Bounty is like $30 for one.
Expensive. So and
I can't believe it's not butter.
Yeah, all these oils. It's all the same. They're high in saturated fat because what you're doing, you're starting with the olive, right? And you're processing it. I would say that oil is the most processed food there is. Because what is left when it becomes oil from the original source? The
content, yeah.
The only thing that's left is the fat. You're taking everything good about that olive and giving yourself the harmful part, the fat. Now, is olive oil better than other oils like canola oil? It's better. So if you're going to do one, I would say, do the healthier oils. But it's a stepwise approach, right? Maybe you're not going to get there overnight, but you'll be surprised if you start to experiment with cooking without oil. You could use water or vegetable broth, and the food turns out the same. And I was so surprised when my wife started using water, just plain water, and cooking, and you don't get that fullness feeling. You feel good, and the food.
But the water evaporates so quickly in a frying pan. As soon as you put a little bit of water, within seconds. How much water are we talking here?
Not much. Just a few tablespoons. Depending, the same amount of oil you would use. It really works. It really works. Yep.
Are you saying to steam your food? Like you do like a steam type food?
Yes.
Just a little water to steam it.
So you're not going to be able to fry something, right? But
no, obviously. Yeah. So no eggs. Well, eggs need to come out.
But light steaming. So that's basically what you accomplish. And That's huge. If you can eliminate oil in your diet, that is huge, right? It takes a mentality though, because you got to convince yourself to eat for health and not for taste. But the thing is, I feel like I haven't lost anything as far as taste wise. The food will still pick up its flavors.
So fried foods, because we didn't talk about fried foods,
Yeah.
but I'm assuming we talked about the fats.
Yeah.
But fried foods are totally out.
Yeah, because of the process it goes through, right?
Right.
By the end, it's so full of saturated fat. As we know, is the core cause of diabetes. So that's number one is getting rid of the oil in a diet is key. And then of course, animal products, weaning yourself off of animal products. So that's meat, dairy, eggs, cheese, things like that, because they're obviously high in fat, and then increasing the amount of whole food, plant-based foods. So your ground foods, your potatoes, squash, yams, fruits of all kinds, lentils, beans, whole grains such as brown rice and quinoa. And there's also the middle ground. There's there's foods that are minimally processed. So instead of eating, if you really like pasta, then try lentil pasta. It's better to eat lentils in its whole state, but maybe like pasta, there's actually alternatives, plant-based alternatives, that you can try out. Like for pasta especially. So you could always try those out.